Good evening and welcome to Left, Right and Centre. It's a 60-minute edition with me, Sanket Upadhyay. Two big stories that we are going to track right here on this show. Story number one, well, very few people seem to be talking about it, but I do not know why. Because it is a huge deal. It's a huge deal. The 7th straight day of fuel price hikes. And not some chota-mota hike. This is huge. 30 paise, 35 paise, it's just ongoing. Obviously, the government says, what can we do? These are crude prices, they're going up. But the point is, when these prices were low, you increased the tax component. And now you're not willing to reduce that, which means the bulk of the burden is not the price itself, but the tax that has been imposed on fuel. So that's the question that we are going to ask with the help of a easy to understand explainer. We'll just explain what exactly we are trying to say. Also on the show, there is a bandh in Maharashtra over the UP farmer debts. Yes, everyone is entitled to register their protest. But should governments be supporting bandhs? What's the great joy in causing economic harm to yourself to prove a point? We have a panel of experts and politicians and also a very special guest, Urmila Matondkar, a proud Mumbaikar, what she thinks about this. But before we go any further, with the help of this explainer, let's quickly take a look at what's happened in the last 2 years. In 2020, we began with petrol at 75 and diesel at 67, 68. This is Delhi. That's the rate of petrol and diesel in Delhi. Now, this is, of course, the rates of 2020. In fact, between January and December, crude prices, they fell by about 23%. But what happened during this period is that because India raised the taxes, what you paid for petrol and diesel actually went up by about 10%. 11% for petrol and 9% for diesel. But this year, and notice what has changed, crude prices have shot up as well. But the taxes have not been cut. So that is why the combination of both means that you are paying record prices. In a way, what has happened is that the government has decided that when crude prices were low, let's quickly tax more so that we can recover some money, we can have some money in our coffers to then divert it for welfare schemes or whatever. But that was basically to even out or balance and not pass on the reduction in the price. Now, when crude prices have actually gone up, the government wants to continue to tax you extensively, heavily, close to over 50% actually. Much more than that. Simply because it is a very convenient tool for the government to earn money. To let that tax component continue on petrol and diesel. So today's discussion is not going to be about the increase in the crude oil rate. That is going to continue to go up and down. What is actually in the control of the government are taxes. Why this financial burden, which is actually your doing? It is taxation. It's got nothing to do, or very little to do, with the crude oil rates. Let's quickly take a look at this report.
Parmeshwar Dhavle, a truck driver from Maharashtra, says the frequent diesel price hikes now means he's running at a loss, even finding it difficult to pay school fees of his children.
क्या करे, गाड़ी तो चलाना पड़ रहा है, नहीं तो बैंक खींच के लेके जाएगा गाड़ी. डीजल इतना बढ़ गया कि पैसा ही नहीं बच रहा है.
Ikramuddin from Amroha, Uttar Pradesh, has been working as a truck driver for the past 2 decades. He says if the situation doesn't improve, he'll be forced to sell his truck and work as a laborer.
सरकार को तो कदम उठाने चाहिए इस चीज में. अन्ना होगा तो हम भी बेच ही देंगे. हम क्या करेंगे, इसका चला के मजदूरी कर लेंगे, कर्जा थोड़ी करते रहेंगे अपने सिर पे इससे.
In Delhi's Okhla vegetable wholesale market, 35-year-old Zakir, who works as a wholesaler, says the sales are dipping with truckers being forced out. Paying workers is getting difficult.
गाड़ियाँ वगैरह आती थी, जो 35 का भाड़ा था, अब तकरीबन 45 का भाड़ा हो गया. और आमदनी भी कम हो गई है, बिक्री भी कम हो गई है. महंगाई इतनी बढ़ रही है कि लोग महंगाई में आलू नहीं खरीद पाते हैं, प्याज भी नहीं खरीद पाते हैं.
In Delhi, the retail price due to shortage of these vehicles is pushing prices up. Tomato price has increased from 20 rupees a kg a month back to 60 rupees per kg, up by 200%. Potato prices have increased from 12 rupees per kg to 20 rupees per kg now, up by 75%. Similarly, capsicum has doubled from rupees 60 per kg to 120 rupees per kg, an increase of 100%. In Hyderabad, low-income families are facing the brunt of the steep hike in petrol and diesel prices.
एक दिन में हजार रुपए कमाते हैं, उसमें 400 पेट्रोल की जा रहा, हम 600 में क्या कर रहा, काम घर में पे करना, वो करना, पेट्रोल का करना, क्या आ रहा, मेरे कुछ भी नहीं आ रहा। ये पहले तो भी 700-800 रुपये मिलता था, अभी दिन भर करने से सिर्फ 500-600 रुपीज़ मेरा, अभी उसमें पेट्रोल भी पेट्रोल को भी हो जा रहा है इसमें।
However, some of those with higher incomes say the citizens should pay more.
We have enjoyed the subsidies from the central government for so many years, especially more during the Congress regime. If the country has to develop, we the Indians have to contribute to the country.
While the consistent rise in the fuel prices is already burning a hole in the pocket of common man, its indirect impact is also now being felt in each and every household. And while a common man has several questions, the government appears to be a mute, helpless spectator on this issue of everyday's fuel price hike. With Uma Sudhir in Hyderabad and camera person Sushil Rathi, I'm Akshay Dongre for NDTV.
Is the government actually a mute and helpless spectator or the one who's responsible for this? Because the component of taxation is something that we are going to discuss today. Yes, crude oil prices have gone up, but when they were low, it's not necessarily that that benefit was passed on to the people of this country. Let's quickly put this to a discussion. Lalita Kumaramangalam, member of the BJP, also the director of the India Foundation with us. Rajat Sethi, he's an economist and a political analyst. Views lean towards the government. Thank you very much, Rajat, seeing you after a very long time. Shama Mohammed, spokesperson of the Congress Party. Thank you very much, Shamaji, for joining us. And Professor Om Prakash Mishra, leader of the Trinamool Congress. Thank you very much, Mr. Mishra, for also joining us. Let me begin with you, Ms. Kumaramangalam.
Thank you.
When prices were low, tax was increased. But when the crude oil prices have increased, a natural expectation will be that the government will understand that if taxes are not reduced, then the common man will face the burden. Why has this not been done? Something which the BJP did when Arun Jaitley was the finance minister.
Sanket, I think it's quite unfair to bring poor Arunji into this now. Arunji lived in a very different type well before COVID. As you know, COVID has hit every economy in the world very badly. And India is not alone in the problem that is facing with fuel shortage. Not just petrol, but I think coal is also in shortage because of many reasons, chiefly being China is buying up every coal it can get because it stopped buying coal from Australia. But that's another argument for a different day. The fact is that crude oil prices have gone up by about $4 to $6 a barrel, and internationally we are facing a shortage. I'm sure you've heard of the hurricane or tempest or whatever the Americans call it, Ida, which has caused roughly 30,000 barrels a day shortage in crude oil. So international prices are going up, and let's also not forget that taxes are not merely levied by the central government, they are also levied by the state governments.
Yeah, but then
all governments of India, both state, let me finish, just one sec, I'll finish very fast. All governments in India, regardless of what what party may be in power, the center and the states, will find it very difficult to decrease taxes now because they are still reeling under the effect of COVID. I'm not using COVID as an excuse, and I'm sure there'll be people to lambast us saying that we don't want to help the poor or the disadvantaged in this country. But let's remember that the government has had to pay for vaccines, for a huge soaring outlay on health, and don't forget the free food and the money that was put into the accounts of the poorest when they needed it most during COVID, when they all lost their jobs. Everybody is struggling now to recover. I'm not saying that it's fair, but what I'm saying is it's not fair just to blame the government. Unfortunately, it will take a little while for economies throughout the world, including India, to recover. And I'm sure the people who are better at economics
I think from what you have said, Ms. Kumaramangalam, from what you have said, what I've been able to deduct, particularly on the point of taxation, which is the focus of this debate, is that the governments are helpless. They can't help but continue to tax because in a post-COVID scenario,
that's a very
that's
harsh
the only
word
option.
to use. It's not that the governments are helpless. There are economic choices that every government has to make.
Okay.
This government has chosen to make a choice whereby the greater good is bought before decreasing
even
taxes.
if that increases
and
or
let's
shoots
say
up
that
inflation,
at least half the taxes
even
on
if that
every liter of
increases
fuel
the
is
price
also
of
levied
basic,
by the states.
Yes, even if that
Let's not
increases
forget
the
that.
price of very basic commodities by up to 50 to 60%. Shama Mohammed, I want to come to you now. So the argument is that taxation is a reality. It has to be done. Nobody can roll it back. And why just blame the center? Look, all states are doing the same.
So a couple of facts. She mentioned that the government, it has no other way. They have to tax because they have no money. I just want to tell her then you should scrap the 20,000 crore Central Vista project. That is not required. You are saying the government has no money. And she mentioned about direct transfer. No direct transfer to the poor has happened during the COVID time. So please get the facts right. They've not been. Now, what has happened? I want to make some clarity.
What are you living in?
No. It is the truth. We've been asking for that. It has not happened. Please, ma'am. I know about it. Now, she.
I think Rajat will give you the details later. He's got the data.
Okay, I also have data because we also go through facts.
Great.
We're not just coming on television like that. And I did not interrupt you, ma'am. So please have the decency to keep quiet.
There's no need to get
You are
personal
interrupting me when I'm speaking.
Okay, one by one.
That's
Please,
okay
please,
for that,
please.
but there's
you
no
can't
need to get
interrupt,
personal,
Mrs.
Mrs. Mohammed. That's a very
Kumaramangalam. It was
dirty
not a
habit
personal
you
thing.
Congress
Ms.
spokespeople
Kumaramangalam,
have.
one moment. Let's go one by one. Yes.
Yeah, so a couple of facts. Now, Sanket, in 2014, she mentioned that before, in 2015, when it was $50 a barrel, the petrol prices were above 75. Why was that? Was there COVID at that point of time? We deregulated petrol in 2010. In 2014, diesel was deregulated. What do you mean by deregulation? Means after that, when the prices of petrol go up, people pay more. And when the price of petrol go down, people pay less. Even then, after 2010, what we did was subsidize. 2005 to 10, we bought oil bonds. All right, worth 1 point. They also, this is one thing I want to clarify. Mrs. Sitaraman put it on oil bonds. 1.44 lakh crores of worth of oil bonds. That matured in 2015. 3,500 crores matured in 2015. That was paid by the present government. The other oil bond is maturing only now in October 2021. So they can't put it on oil bonds. Number two, 9,000 crore worth of oil bonds were borrowed by the Vajpayee government in 2002. Who paid for that? Our government. Did we ever say that, you know what, we have to increase the petrol price or decrease the petrol prices because of the oil bonds? We did not say that because that's a norm. The next government pays it. Then, very importantly, in 2014, when the petrol prices, the oil prices per dollar a barrel was 80, we were paying 71 for petrol and 57 for diesel. Just look at that, you know. Sorry, $108 a barrel it was, not 80.
I think the point that was being made,
let me make one point. Let me finish this.
Is the difference of taxation between the center and the state.
1 minute, let me finish. Because the excise duty at that point was 9 for petrol, 9 rupees for petrol per litre, and for diesel was 3.2. Now the excise duty is 33, my dear, 33 for petrol, and for diesel it's 32. And in 2020 it was 19 for petrol and for diesel for 15. In 1 year, look at the increase of the excise duty. We kept it at 9
which is a central tax.
3. Yes, that is what we need to see. From 9, and after deregulation, we subsidize. Try to understand. Because at that point, the petrol prices were very high, 108, 110, 120.
Okay, fair enough. I've got your point.
Yeah,
very quickly, Professor Mishra. Yes, Professor Mishra, fair enough. Shama Mohammed has made her point on excise duty because this is a reality. And I'll come back to Rajat Sethi as well as Lalitha Kumaramangalam so that they can answer this question. Now, Professor Mishra, see, the thing is that to say that petrol and diesel prices have been completely deregulated and, you know, nobody controls them. How I wish there were always elections in this country, because magically when West Bengal elections were happening, not only did petrol and diesel prices freeze, they actually came down a little. And immediately after the results, we've been seeing that they've been going up and God knows where. Professor Mishra, do you feel that this is a very conscious decision that has been taken to just make a lot of money off petrol and diesel?
Definitely, because in the month of March and April, the price rise was only 15 paise and so on. But after 2nd May, that month, 3 rupees 85 paise. This year we have seen 20 rupees increase. This is number one. We heard some very, pathetic rationalization from BJP spokesperson. We can all agree that if the crude prices are going to increase, then naturally there will be an increase in the prices of petrol and diesel. But then the reality is that the prices were actually very, very low. And then the benefit was never passed over. So therefore this entire question of, government not having a control, that is a farce. Secondly, we know that this government came to power on the plank of bahut hui महंगाई की मार अब की बार Modi Sarkar. Now Mr. Prime Minister is not even uttering a single word on this subject. Thirdly, I would like to point out that the public finance and public policy, both these two aspects are the weakest link for this government. I agree that the states also do get the component of the taxes, but so far as the economic policy is concerned, the central
I'll tell you,
government
Professor
has
Mishra, where there has been an allegation against the opposition also. The centre says that, see, we wanted petrol and diesel in the ambit of the GST, and the loudest noise was made by the opposition ruled states. That where will we earn our money? You are earning 30 plus rupees of your excise duty.
That is not.
And you want to rob us of our money.
That is not correct. And in fact, all this must take us to revisit the center-state financial relations in the constitution. The center-state financial relations is heavily skewed in favor of the center. And as we all do know, that the central government has many different ways and means by which it can raise its coffer, it can fill in the gaps. But so far as the state governments are concerned, they cannot do, and they are completely at the mercy. And we know even the GST dues have not been paid.
Okay, Rajat Sethi, I want to come to you now. Rajat, lots of important points that have been made over here.
On so far as the public policy.
One moment, Professor Mishra. Rajat Sethi, important points that have been made here, and you as an economist, I would suggest should give us solutions. Is taxing petrol and diesel the only way to shore up revenue? Only? Or perhaps the biggest way to shore up revenue and nothing else? And how would you explain the fact that central excise duty has gone up to 30 rupees plus on petrol and diesel?
No, here Sanket, I need to break down a few things for you. First thing is that please understand that all the statistics, date-wise statistics that you are presenting, you are not showcasing when has the excise duty of the government gone up. The prices have certainly gone up, but there is a all-out freeze on the excise duty of the central government. Now, let me help you understand how the budget-making exercise is done. Budget, whenever the parliament approves the budget, they need to have a good hold as to what is the revenue that the government anticipates to collect from the tax-paying consumers of the country, the citizens of the country, through direct taxes and indirect taxes. And one of the important tax component is through the excise duties levied onto petrol and diesel. Now that component hasn't changed, and every budget estimation that you do as to how much the government is going to spend is all anchored around how much money government can collect on the petrol and fuel fuel commodities being consumed. See, understand that all budget making itself will fail if you do not have a consistent stand as to how much you are going to collect through each of these individual heads. That is why the governments get worried when the GST collections aren't to the level of expectations, because then it has a cascading effect on where all the government will have to reduce its expenditures. So you are questioning the entire rationale of budget making if you start changing the excise duty by every increase of petrol prices happening globally. And let me state this out today on your show, Sanket, that we are headed to a very peculiar global scenario where there is a commodity squeeze happening. The European countries and the North American countries are right now worried. Their principal point number one of worry is that how will they pass this extremely harsh winter that is going to come in. There is very little supply of gas, liquefied natural gas that they are anticipating. They are expecting there will be huge blackouts. All of this is going to have a cascading effect even on India.
No,
so we have to brace ourselves.
While I agree with what you're saying, the point of this discussion, this is exactly why. See, there is a rationale why prices are going up. There is no rationale, and you've tried to offer it on why the taxes are so high. Obviously, they will increase. No, Sanket, I can understand that they were constraints. The government wanted to earn money.
In the middle of a financial year, you cannot expect the government to suddenly curtail its source of revenue by cutting it by half or by whatever percentage of point. How will the government go back to the parliament and say that they are going to sponsor all the pro-poor people schemes that they have rolled out?
Didn't you do it in 2017, 2018? I'm sorry, I have to go back to the point where late Mr. Arun Jaitley announced a rollback.
Rollback of what?
Of taxes.
He did not. See, whenever if there is a fillip in the GST tax and it provides a cushion to the government that yes, they see that there is a significant amount of elbow room to reduce the excise duty, so only then that's going to come out. Right now, the GST is barely catching up to the level where the government anticipates is going to fill back the coffers which have been emptied because of COVID.
Of course not. Of course not. He can bring about all these economics to me. I want to ask him one thing. How do you improve the economy is when you increase demand. And how do you increase demand? When people have money. You can say all your things about, I'm the economist. When people don't have money, you understand one very important thing, Rajat. COVID has made a lot of job losses. All right, 12.2 crore people lost their jobs. And those who have jobs are getting only 50% of their salary. I go around at the ground level, shopkeepers, some of the shops, like for example in Kerala, 3 days a week they're open, 3 days they are not open because of COVID in the last 1 year or so. So people have no money, all right, in their hands. The gas price is 900 rupees. People are crying. So basically, when petrol and diesel especially goes up, food prices go up. People have to have money in their hands. So whatever the government is trying to do, at the end, if people don't have money in their hands,
okay, I think this
what is going to...
Important point. Lalita Kumaramangalam.
Let me finish on this.
Point I can't hear one moment. I'll sum up because I have very limited time. I've understood what you're saying, Shamaji. Let me just ask the question.
This is daylight robbery, Sanket. Daylight robbery.
Lalita Kumaramangalam, here's the thing. I think what is being alleged by the Congress party is that you're saying that all these taxes we are collecting to help the people. So, ek haath le, ek haath de attitude. First of all, you will create a situation where there will be high inflation, there will be a cascading effect, fuel prices up, correspondingly it's already started happening, soya oil up, mustard oil up, vegetables price up, everything up. So people will buy expensive things so that eventually, we can play the role of a welfare state and offer them some ease.
But Modi doesn't like a welfare state, no, he never liked Manrega, he never liked any of this.
Lalita Kumaramangalam's response.
Sanket, unfortunately, I couldn't hear almost anything of what the other speakers said. The volume here is too low. I'm sorry.
But you heard my question, all right?
Shifting, I don't know what's happened. But I heard what you said.
Yeah.
So I'm presuming this is roughly what the others said. Now, the thing is that let's also remember that the government is not just spending on subsidies at the moment. In order to recover from COVID, the very simple economic fact is that unless there is massive infrastructure spending, massive, from the side of the government, because as we all know, all businesses have taken a hit. So we can't expect only private business to take on the burden of helping the economy recover. And let's also remember the economy is every Indian's economy, poor, rich, underprivileged, privileged, etc. The government, unless it spends massively on infrastructure, COVID recovery, economic recovery is going to be very, very difficult, if not impossible. So to assume that...
So you're saying that this is a bitter pill we'll have to swallow for a better tomorrow. There is no other way.
Yes, there is another way. It is a bitter pill. Unfortunately, perhaps there may be other ways.
Okay, Shama Mohammed, last 10 seconds, running out of time. Your solution.
Yeah, the government has to borrow. They can't keep looking at the fiscal deficit. They have to borrow and or print money. That is the solution. They can't tax us. That is what they need to do, which they are not doing.
Run out of time.
They keep looking at the fiscal deficit.
Okay, Shama Mohammed, Rajat Sethi, Lalita Kumaramangalam, as well as Professor Mishra, thank you very much. We are stopping for a short break at this moment. When we come back, we'll go to the other big story. There's a Bandh in Maharashtra, which was called over UP farmer deaths. But we ask a basic question. Should governments actually be supporting bandhs? That debate up next. All right, welcome back. The second topic of discussion, There is a bandh in Maharashtra over farmer deaths in Uttar Pradesh. But the question that we are asking is whether governments should sponsor bandhs and inflict financial loss, because that was a huge problem, and also beat up people, which was the allegation. Forcefully impose a bandh. Is that good or is that bad, or is this terrible? What a terrible thing to do to citizens of your own state. To discuss this, I have with me our first guest, Urmila Matondkar, noted actor as well as leader of the Shiv Sena. Thank you very much, Urmila ji, for joining us. My first question, you think the state must sponsor things like bandhs?
No. Let me just make it very clear. Maharashtra has always been a very strong state when it has come to our fundamental rights and protecting those rights. It has always taken its stand and stood firm onto it. Now, when we say our fundamental rights, that's where the question mark, I guess, comes, because our is we is who? We is the people of this nation. So people of this nation, the biggest class and the most important class of them all, the farmers, have been on this protest for such a long time, for almost over a year now. 500 to 600 people have already lost their lives during their various hardships. Now it has gone to another level of this particular killings which have happened in this place. And I think it is a time to take up a stand for all of them, to send a message to the people who matter, who are not speaking anything about all of this and we're busy looking in another manner, that they are not alone, that we are all standing with them. So it's a fight which is to protect our fundamental rights, and I think it is perfectly justificable. It has happened in the times of the UPA government, where BJP has called for many such bandhs and been very aggressively made sure that they would be followed, etc. So I don't think it is about all of that. When the question is about the, and I find it fascinating. There was a man dead abroad, and because of police atrocity, and Black Lives Matter was trending, and everybody in India, from the leaders to the celebrities, were hashtagging it, Black Lives Matters. But I think the time has come to finally scream loud and clear that farmers' lives matter. And whatever happened was so atrocious to look at. It was so cold-blooded and gruesome that it is frankly shocking that nobody has found it necessary to comment on it, to say anything about it, and they're busy looking the other way. And this is kind of normalizing the whole process. So I'm very proud that Maharashtra government, that Maha Vikas Aghadi, the three big parties of the state, have come together, stood together, and are very successful. And I must bring your attention to this point, that from the normal dabbawalas to the Vyapari people, everybody, they've all come ahead and put in their bit in the spontaneous kind of a support for this bandh. So I think the message is loud and clear. And the farmers are not alone there. We are all standing with them in this.
Yes, but Ms. Urmila Matondkar, see, the thing is, what is the great joy in inflicting financial pain to oneself to prove a point?
I want to bring your attention to one point, that I agree to an extent to this. But the time has come today, like I said earlier, that this has been going on for a year. Lots of things from the top point, that are these even farmers? They are not farmers only. What do they understand? Meaning, I don't understand. The people, whatever laws which have been introduced, the people for whom they are introduced are constantly busy, they're protesting against it, whichever ones they have been in the past also. And people don't understand anything, and they have been constantly pushed on their necks. So what is another way of looking at it? And the time to sit on fence is gone. Today I read a tweet of a very celebrated journalist saying something similar to what you just said. But the thing is, like I said earlier, that there comes a point where the message needs to be sent loud and clear. Maharashtra, yes, has in the recent times has been going through very tough and difficult times, and that's why I think their stand at this point is more commendable, that they have still shown their strength and support to the farmers, because if the time has come, if we now look the other way, want to plead to all those big famous journalists and anchors and everybody, the part of media, who like to believe that they are still normal, not gone busy looking the other way, or sharing false information. Like, if these videos wouldn't have come out, we would have never known the full truth, isn't it? So I want to make a request, take this chance, that the time to sit on fence is gone. So let's just get down there and make our stand clear. That's what this has been about.
No, No, I agree with your point of not being a fence sitter, but Ms. Urmila Matondkar, my final question to you, why should people be beaten up? You want to observe a Bandh, go ahead and do it. The government wants to sponsor it, go ahead and do it. But what if someone does not want to follow it? You can't beat him up, can you? Which is exactly what in some cases happened today.
Of course not. Of course not. Of course, they should be voluntary. And I mean, people should come in with anything cannot be forceful. In fact, that would defy the whole purpose of any, use of power or so if at all it has happened, which I just heard it a place or two where an incident has happened, that is absolutely not something that one would stand for or one would, say was fine. But at the same time, I would like to underline this, that overall, all over Maharashtra, people from all the economic stratas have stood up for it because it is very simple. I would like to know what is the thought process of those people who are then, I mean, if you are not with the Bandh, then that means you are with the people who have been behind this massacre of these people. There has been a young man called Raman Kashyap who was a young journalist who is dead in the whole middle of all of this. There has been a 22-year-old, 40-year-old, 60-year-old people who have been just massacred like their lives never matter. So when is that hashtag where farmers' lives matter is going to come in the forefront? So each and every one of the citizen of Maharashtra, which again I'm saying has been a very strong state when it comes to taking stands for our own, fundamental rights. I think coming from a state like that, the message is loud and clear that we stand with them and we will stand with them. Farmers' lives matter. That's the message. That's all.
Okay, Ms. Urmila Matondkar, thank you very much. You said that those who are not with this Bandh, who are they with? So the point very simply is, as I introduce my guest, Niranjan Shetty, spokesperson of the BJP, Anand Dubey, spokesperson of the Shiv Sena, Charan Singh Sapra, spokesperson of the Congress. Thank you very much to the three of you. The point is, I may support the cause of the farmers, but I may not necessarily want to express it in the form of a Bandh. Now that's the point, Mr. Dubey. ये एक point है जो कि बड़ा महत्वपूर्ण है. लोगों को मजबूर करना, फोर्स करना, उनको मारना, जैसे कि इन फोटोज में दिखाई दे रहा है, ये कहाँ की समझदारी है? मैं हो सकता है मैं किसानों के साथ हूँ, लेकिन मुझे बंद नहीं पसंद. You know, farmers' lives matter, so the life of a rickshaw puller also matters, और an auto rickshaw driver also matters.
संकेत जी प्रणाम. सबसे पहले देखिए, महत्वपूर्ण बात यह है कि हम एक तरफ किसान की बात करते हैं, जवान की बात करते हैं, लेकिन जब उनके सम्मान की बात करते हैं तो विपक्षियों को लगता है कि हम राजनीति की बात कर रहे हैं. आप देखिए कि यह बंद किसका था. यह बंद महाविकास आघाड़ी की सरकार का नहीं था, यह राजनीतिक दलों का बंद था. कांग्रेस पार्टी, शिवसेना पार्टी, राष्ट्रवादी कांग्रेस पार्टी. और जिस बखूबी से आज का यह बंद सफल हुआ है, आप देखिए कि महाराष्ट्र की 13 करोड़ की जनता, उन्होंने इस बंद को सफल बनाया है. सुबह से लेकर शाम तक एक छुटपुट घटनाओं को यदि छोड़ दें तो पूरी तरह से आज का यह बंद बहुत ही सफल रहा, किसानों के सम्मान में रहा. आखिर क्यों न रहे. आप एक बात बताइए, जिस प्रकार से उत्तर प्रदेश के लखीमपुर खीरी की घटना घटी है, जिस प्रकार से किसानों को कुचला गया है, किसके द्वारा? यदि कोई आम व्यक्ति कुचले होते तो शायद बहस का मुद्दा और होता, लेकिन कुचलने वाला कौन है? भारत का केंद्रीय राज्य मंत्री और उनका बेटा और उनके सहयोगी. क्या इस पर बहस नहीं होनी चाहिए? एक तरफ
होनी चाहिए, लेकिन अगर एक राज्य सरकार जबरदस्ती ये करे तो ये कहां की समझदारी?
जबरदस्ती नहीं संकेत भाई, मैंने पहले अपने शब्दों को कहा है कि यह बंद जबरदस्ती नहीं था, यह पूरी तरह जनता का बंद था, यह पॉलिटिकल पार्टियों द्वारा बंद लगाया गया था. इसको जो बार बार कह रहे हैं कि सरकार द्वारा स्पॉन्सरशिप बंद था, तो ऐसा बिल्कुल नहीं है. मैं आपको क्लियर कर दूं, यह राजनीतिक पार्टी द्वारा बंद था. इस बंद में केवल भारतीय जनता पार्टी सम्मिलित नहीं थी. पता नहीं उनके मस्तिष्क में क्या विचारधारा चल रही है.
Yes, Niranjan Shetty, before I come to you, one moment. I think everybody in this country, particularly here, as we've been broadcasting non-stop on Lakhimpur, has an element of sympathy or great amount of sympathy for the farmers, but also we want justice for everyone who died in Lakhimpur Kheri. Similarly, we also may want to respect the decision of a few in Mumbai who want to go about their life. You know, for people live from day to day. So they have to earn every day. If you will say Bandh, it will lead to great financial harm. I don't even know how many people would have gone hungry in Mumbai because they live, on a day-to-day wage. Before I come to you, Mr. Shetty, there is a question on the Coup app. Raktim Datta has asked this question. Does any kind of Bandh ever resolve any problems? That's the question that has been asked. Then Siddharth Palaparam also asks a question. Imposing Bandhs is not a solution for all these matters. The thing needed is a thorough police investigation. Niranjan Shetty, what's your reply?
Sanket, I think what Mr. Anand Dubey spoke, that this was a political party's Bandh. But I need to remind him that it was the Maharashtra government which passed a resolution in the state cabinet few days back, and they decided to call a Bandh. All these three parties came together and they passed a resolution in the cabinet meeting. This has happened for the first time in the history of any assembly or in the state government. Now I do not know what made him lie on the channel, but this is the fact. This is the first time in the history of the India that a state cabinet rank of Home Minister himself, Mr. Shambhu Raje, in Satara, himself goes on site to see the proceedings along with the IPS officers to see whether the Bandh has been carried out properly or not. This is utterly shame, and this has, it has brought down the respect of the Constitution itself and such kind of people, those who are. I am ashamed also to understand that this kind of IPS officers are playing into the hands of such ministers. Apart from that, what I was trying to say, he spoke about Lakhimpur. Mr. Anand Dubey hails from UP. He could have gone to Uttar Pradesh, staged a demonstration or a strike over there. Why does he want to strike over here, 2,000 kilometers away?
No, he can hold his protest wherever he wants.
I'm suggesting
people can object to what is happening in Lakhimpur Kheri sitting in London also. That is their right.
Of course, I do not disagree. But this kind of, as you rightly mentioned about the daily wages, and what he again, his leader Urmila Matondkar, he himself mentioned about that this was not a forcible Bandh. On the contrary, this was compelled. The people and the businessmen were compelled to close. And since now Congress or NCP are very happy because Shiv Sena is with them and there is no need to put more force. The name itself is enough for anybody to close down the shutter. So no common man would ever try to get himself hurt or been attacked by this such hooliganism.
Okay. Charan Singh Sapra, I want to come to you now. Mr. Dubey, I'll come back to you. Just one moment. Mr. Sapra, you support the Maharashtra Vikas Aghadi. You also supported this Bandh. There were protests across the country. Now, one is that you observe silence, Maun Vrat, right? Or carry out protests on the road, hit the streets, object to something. Now, that is all justified. But for a government to sponsor a Bandh in the financial capital of the country, where obviously, there is some amount of financial pain which will be inflicted upon residents of that very state. Do you think that this is a very retro form of politics which you are trying to reintroduce? I mean, something that used to happen long ago. Ki mill ban kar diya, shut this, shut that.
See, Sanket, I feel number one, like Urmila ji earlier said, that this is a different case. It is about protecting the fundamental rights. And number two, this Bandh was largely supported voluntarily by various unions, by various associations, whether they were wholesalers association or the retailers associations or the trade unions, all the associations and the unions, whether they were APMC markets. Everybody voluntarily supported this Bandh because this is a different sort of case whereby the entire nation has seen 4 or 5 farmers being butchered. Those farmers were hit from behind by a car of the notorious goon of Bharatiya Janata Party, and the way his father, who is the Minister of State for Home, is trying to protect him from day one. The way the BJP government of Uttar Pradesh took 6 days to arrest him, while he was treated with kids' gloves, There are so many questions. Why the butlers were carrying tea and snacks for the culprit in the crime branch? Viewing all these scenes, there's a large amount of sympathy which has got generated in the interest of farmers.
No, Mr. Sapra, my question is, are you tapping into that sentiment across the country against what is political high-handedness and an attempt to brazen it out? Or you're trying to create, take this issue outside of Uttar Pradesh, take it to Tamil Nadu, take it to other parts of the country and bring it to Maharashtra as well? What of these two is correct?
Sanket, this issue is already gone out of Uttar Pradesh. You know, when people have seen on the electronic media or on the social media the way farmers were butchered, the gruesome murder of farmer and the way the father was protecting, I feel this is gone beyond Uttar Pradesh now. The sentiments of the entire country is with the farmers. The people, the Narendra Modi government is keeping mum. Narendra Modi has no sensitivity even to tweet for this issue. He or Amit Shah has not even tweeted. Leave aside going to the residence of the victims or meeting the victim families. This is a completely insensitive government against which people are coming out to protest. Whether it is Maharashtra, you will see another state tomorrow or day after, people will be on the street.